everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be talking about one of the most iconic power pop bands of all time. Yeah, I'm talking about the Records. Now, I usually like to tell people how I got into the band before I start going through their CD catalog, and this one's going to be super easy. So I was introduced to the Records on September 28th, 1979, the Midnight Special. The Cars were promoting their album Candy-O, and they were the hosts of the show. And the other two artists that I remember being on the show was Suicide. And of course, when I saw the band Suicide, my mind was, well, what is going on here? Because I was 15 years old at the time. But the other band was the Records. And I saw them and I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want to hear right now. Because I was already at that time into the Jam and the Clash and Buzzcocks and all those bands. You know, I was really into the real pop side of punk and new wave. So at that time, their first American album was released in the U.S. It was self-titled, and I asked for it for my 16th birthday, and I received it for my 16th birthday. So October 13th, 1979 was the very first time I owned a Records album. So let's start going through their catalog. The first CD I'm going to show you is Shades in Bed. This was the UK version of their debut album. Completely different cover. The track listing was mixed around and very different from the US version. I still prefer the US version. It makes for a stronger album. The album includes bona fide power pop classics such as Starry Eyes, two versions, Tina Rama, Up All Night, All Messed Up and Ready to Go, Another Star. My favorite is Affection Rejected. Now, this album featured John Wicks on vocals and guitar, Will Birch on drums, Phil Brown on bass and vocals, and Hugh Gower on guitar and vocals. The songs generally were written by John Wicks and Will Birch, and John Wicks covers most of the lead vocals on the album, but the other members do sing on some of the tracks. And the UK version came with a 4-track, 12-inch single featuring 4 cover versions. In the US, it was a 7-inch containing the same 4 different cover versions. Yeah, we're getting into nerdy geek stuff, but back to the album. This album was full of great, wonderful songs, including Starry Eyes. Now, here is where things are a little bit different, and it's time for a nerd alert. For any of you who bought the original vinyl LP of the American album, the inner sleeve had all the lyrics to all the songs in the album, include Starry Eyes. In the lyrics of Starry Eyes, there's a chorus that does not appear on the American version of the album. That's because it's on the British version of the album. Starry Eyes, the song that we all know and love, that's the single version. On the UK version of the album, they re-recorded it. When it came out in the US, they replaced it with the single version. I know, geek stuff. But here is the CD. It contains the original track order of the UK version, followed by the 4 cover versions that were on the EP, followed by things like the original single version of Starry Eyes, the non-album A-side Rock and Roll Love Letter, plus B-sides, a remix of Tina Rama. But this is fantastic. A lot of people hold this up as the best Records album, but I'm going to tell you right now what my favorite Records album is, and that would be their second album, Crashes, that came out in 1980. Now, by this time, Hugh Gower was out of the band, and they brought in Jude Cole, who was a member of Moon Martin's band. And Jude Cole had this really sort of high Paul McCartney-esque voice, so it blended really well with John Wicks' lead vocals on harmonies. And in fact, they let Jude Cole sing lead on a couple tracks here, and his vocals really stood out. Just jam-packed full of great songs. Hearts in Her Eyes is on this album. John Wicks and Will Birch originally wrote that for the Searchers. Some of my other favorites include Hearts Will Be Broken, Girl in Golden Disc, Guitars in the Sky, Rumor Sets the Woods Alight, I Don't Remember Your Name, Man with a Girl-Proof Heart. Just a great collection of songs. This has bonus tracks, as you can see again right there. One of the best record songs ever is a B-side, and it's called So Sorry. It was written and sung by bassist Phil Brown, and that's one of the bonus tracks. And then there's some unreleased tracks there as well, including a track performed with vocalist Jane Eyre from Jane Eyre and the Belvederes. An absolute wonderful slice of guitar, power pop, jangle. Everything that you want in great pop music is on this album. the Records, Crashes, released in 1980. Remember how Hugh Gower left after the first album and then Jude Cole joined for the second album? Well, Jude Cole left after the second album and they replaced him with two different members for Music on Both Sides that came out in 1982. Two members were guitarist Dave Whelan and lead singer Chris Gent. Now, Chris Gent had a very different vocal style from John Wicks, from Jude Cole, from any member of the band, and oddly enough, one of the main points that really drew me into the Records was John Wicks' voice. On this album, he sings lead on no tracks. You can hear him very clearly as a backing vocalist, but Chris Gent handles all the vocals. He's got sort of more of a rough rock sound, but I love this cover. I love that. I love this cover. I love that kind of art, by the way. But this was a very solid album, a bunch of great songs, but it sounded like a different band that recorded Crashes. And Crashes sounded kind of like a different band that recorded the first album. I love a band that evolves and doesn't stay the same. So I was happy to hear this. It's still filled with great songs, like Imitation Jewelry, Selfish Love, Heather and Hell, Not So Much the Time, Keeping Up with Jones, Third Hand Information. Lots of great songs. The only single released from the album was called Imitation Jewelry, and the B-side was called Your Own Soundtrack. Now that was just as strong as anything else on the album. And in fact, they lead off the album with it because it's such a great song. In fact, that song is probably referenced more than any track on the album. I have to admit, some Records fans aren't big fans of this album. I still love it to this very day. Lots of bonus tracks there that you really need to own. I love this artwork too. If I can get a shirt with that artwork, I'd probably go wee wee in my pants. This is so fantastic. So full of just great pop melodies. You can see that they're sort of maybe adapting some modern styles of that time from 82, but they're still strictly rooted in just great 60s oriented pop. But after this album, in fact, I think even before the album came out, the band had split. Then later on in the CD age, before those albums came out on CD, there was Smashes, Crashes, and Near Misses, and you could tell that it features lots of great album tracks, and there's a couple rarities on there as well. So if you can't find those CDs, or if you want to get a taste of what the records were like, Smashes, Crashes, and Near Misses is a nice addition to your catalog. That came out in 1988, and it only features stuff from the three albums and the singles released around that time. Now in 1989, a CD was released called A Sunny Afternoon in Waterloo, which I do not own a copy of, but I do have the artwork featured right there. I believe all the songs on that were written by Will Birch, and it's a nice little collection of like 8 demos of the 4 original members, Hugh Gower, John Wicks, Will Birch, and Phil Brown, recorded before the records were signed. They're in this sort of bluesy rock vein, like, Dr. Feelgood or 9 Below Zero. Great rock and roll. It doesn't necessarily sound like the records, but these are 4 very talented individuals. Then in 1990, there was also Paying for the Summer of Love. This is kind of the demos that got the band signed to Virgin, but the songs include Teen-A-Rama, Up All Night, Coin Machine, which I don't believe ended up anywhere else. Of course, Starry Eyes, a Coca-Cola Jingle, which is just a short track based around Teen-A-Rama, and there's also a song called If I Write Your Number in My Book. Like I said, these are all demos, and it's nice to hear these songs in their raw original form, especially being such a big fan of the band. So that's definitely something to check out as well. In 1998, John Wicks returned with the album Rockola, and what this is, it's basically John Wicks and a new group, so he's performing it as John Wicks and the Records and Rockola. This was released, I believe, only in Spain. Highlights on this include Edges of a Dream, That Girl Is Emily, So Close to Home. These top 3 tracks were professionally recorded, mixed and stuff in a studio, where the rest of them were more like demos, but they still sound fun, energetic, and it's back, of course, to being that great John Wicks vocal again. Rockola, nearly everything on this disc from here down are only available here. So it's not like they ended up anywhere else. So you're definitely going to want to check that down. Now, the first 3 songs on this ended up on the 2007 release, Rotate, by John Wicks and the Records. It's great John Wicks pop. It's not exactly the Records, but it's pretty darn close, especially when you listen to the way that he's layered the backing vocals. It's not Jude Cole on backing vocals, but they are higher harmonies, and the vocal blend is very similar to what you'll find on, things like Crashes. But this was a collection of really cool pop songs was released on Cool Cat Music. I believe there might be a couple different versions of this cover. As far as I know, any version of Rotate that's out there features the same tracks. And it's great pop. I love the fact that John continued to make great guitar pop music. And it's such a shame that the old records fans really didn't pay too much attention to it, and the world at large never paid attention to the records, period. Now, sadly, Phil Brown died in 2012. John Wicks died in 2018. Will Birch went on to produce a bunch of great records, including a great Any Trouble album called Wrong End of the Race, and others, and he's become an author. In fact, he is the author of the most recent Nick Lowe biography, which I still have to get. Anyway, I really appreciate you allowing me to talk about the records here. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.